Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Nick Farabaugh on today. I talked about how this was a meat and potatoes draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they got, but we have to talk about the quarterback situation, how they handled it. Was Will Howard the right pick for them? Why didn't they get Shedeur Sanders? And do we have a hint towards who their future franchise quarterback could be like with the way that they're assembling their quarterback room right now? All that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. As I said, we're joined by the man himself, Nick Farabaugh. He's back. Nick, is always good to have you, man. I've talked a lot about this class throughout the weekend. We have our bonus episodes up on both Saturday and Sunday, so if y'all missed that, go check that out. And we'll be doing plenty of breakdowns on a lot of the different prospects that came through this class. But I want to talk to you, Nick, about the quarterback position, because that might have been the most polarizing thing. I guess quarterback is always the most polarizing thing. When you don't have a franchise quarterback, everyone thinks that somebody's a superstar quarterback in weight. But I just remember seeing Steelers fans being so divided with the first round pick. Well, why did you get this DT? Why didn't you get Shedeur? And then as the draft went further and further, why aren't you getting a quarterback? And this level of panic was that was there. Do you feel like, Nick, in just you evaluate talent, you go over lots of tape, you watch things, across the board. Did you feel like the way that they handled this draft and then picking Will Howard was well done on their part, or do you think that's just what they settled for and they mismanaged a few things?
No, I'm completely cool with them kicking and punting on this draft. I mean, we've talked about this before on this very podcast. Mm-hmm. I think as a talent, Shedeur is clearly better than the rest of the guys. I thought he was better than Dart, and Dart went in the first round. But I just know the tape of Shedeur, right? So there are other factors around Shedeur, obviously. Heard the reports about interviews. I don't know anything about that. I couldn't tell you about it because all I've done is stand at a podium for 5 minutes and listen to Shedeur talk. So I wouldn't know. But I thought Shedeur on tape was solid, but I never thought he was a franchise-changing quarterback. That was the thing, right? He was always a floor raiser, not a ceiling raiser to me. I think the Steelers need to go after a ceiling raiser. And I think when you get a guy like Will Howard, who in my opinion could have been drafted in the 4th round, and you could have called that a good pick, it's a good pick. I mean, this guy to me screams, decade-long backup in the NFL. Honestly, reminds me a little bit of Mason Rudolph in a few ways, right? The poise in the pocket. He's a little robotic, which is good and bad at times, just like Mason's a little robotic at times. He gets through his read. I wouldn't call him a super processor, but he's a good player that gets the ball to the right spots. He's accurate. His pressure to sack ratio, I think, is his biggest boom. I mean, this guy steps up in the pocket. He gets the ball out on schedule. If you give him clean pockets, he will win. Even in pressure situations, if he just needs to step up or move around the pocket, he can do it. This guy's a solid player in terms of backup role. And so, man, when you're getting into the 6th round and stuff, I mean, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a long-term young guy with some backup upside. We've seen the death of the mid-round quarterback really throughout these last 3 or 4 drafts. I mean, Shuck went in the 2nd round, but really, I mean, once you kind of get through that 2nd round to 3rd round range, usually it doesn't happen until late 3rd, early 4th, where those QBs start coming off the board again, which is what we saw happen in this one. I don't think the Steelers messed this up at all. I think Will Howard is a completely fine pick for them. I think some of the guys that went in front of him, certainly he's better than. And so I think this is a completely fine pick. And they punted on this year's quarterback class. It was a bad QB class. We talked about it. Drafting one early, it wouldn't have necessarily been the same as 22, but it would have been very similar. It would have been forcing a pick just to take one, right? To take one, I think, is a bad idea if you don't believe that guy is the franchise quarterback. And I mean, that's what I've talked to, people in the organization, in the league about, man. You don't just take a quarterback, just take a quarterback. That's what bad franchises do. And so the Steelers showed conviction. They had a long-term plan, and now they're going to stick with it. And so I'm completely fine with what they did here. And they got a great value pick in Will Howard. Again,
I agree.
The fact that he was there in the 6th round, I think, is kind of crazy to me. To me, this guy should have been drafted about 2 rounds earlier.
No, yeah, I'm right with you on that. I thought he was I thought Will Howard was an optimal choice in the 4th round. To get him in the 6th, great value. Like they figured that out. But I think the thing is that it's for some people it's less about Will Howard and it's more about Shedeur Sanders. And it's more about Shedeur Sanders not, I guess, with his not being picked. Some people still believe, the truthers that, hey, like he is that guy. He just needs the opportunity. But I do wonder what your assessment is of how Shedeur Sanders handled this draft process, why he's still available, and all the different factors to kind of be aware of in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing, right? Shedeur is this very you talk about polarization. I mean, is there a prospect that's ever been as polarizing as him? I think the tape shows that he can be, I think, a solid NFL quarterback. We talked about some of his deficiencies. He doesn't have an elite arm. He runs into some pressure, creates his own pressure at times. He's got some things to work on in the lower body mechanics, specifically with his rotation mechanics. But he's a guy that is smart. He's good above the neck. He's very accurate. So there are definitely things to hang your hat on with him. But people are acting to me, and this is the thing about it, is they're acting like this guy is going to win you Super Bowls. And
Right.
Listen, I just don't see that with him. I really do admire Shedeur's confidence in himself.
Yeah,
I admire the belief he has in himself. I do. I just think in terms of the tape, when you watch it, there are some things there that are concerning for his ceiling at this level. I think for a floor, though, I think he can definitely be, a starting quarterback. I certainly think he can become one of your top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. He should probably have a starting spot in the league at some point, as long as he can prove himself. And, there's a good shot that 5th round pick ends up being much better than it's going to appear, right now. So I do like Shedeur as a player, but I just think, when people are saying, like, for example, Mel Kiper just going on and on.
Oh my gosh, that was so ridiculous.
I mean, my goodness. I mean, I feel like, you're acting like you're passing on a franchise-changing player. I just don't view Shedeur in that light. I view him as a very solid player, but he is not a franchise changer. And if you are in the AFC, we've talked about this. Look at the quarterbacks the Steelers face in their division. Burrow, Jackson, and then when you go outside of it, Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Stroud. I mean, so many great players at quarterback in this conference. So it's just really hard for me to buy into the kind of theory that you should get a floor raiser in the AFC. Floor raisers in the AFC don't mean jack. They don't. You need ceiling raisers to go toe for toe, because when it comes down to the playoffs, it's those quarterbacks that make the play. And listen, the Steelers, I understand the quarterback angst. The free agency process has been long and drawn out because Aaron Rodgers hasn't decided yet. You missed on Justin Fields. You missed on Sam Darnold. Russ went elsewhere. Okay, I understand it. You don't really have a clear starter right now. But listen, it's really it feels like somewhat of a transitional year. It does it not? I mean, they are kind of setting this up to be like, hey, 2026 is going to be our swing at quarterback. And this year we're going to find a patchwork solution, where that patchwork solution was a young guy with some upside like Fields or Darnold, or an older vet. It was going to be some type of bridge option. And none of them were going to be franchise-changing options. And I think that's what it comes down to. So I think you were going to be whelmed or underwhelmed by most of these options. And that's just the factor of it. And not pushing that button in the draft to kind of push this forward and take you out of the 2026 class is the correct decision. That you could not take one in the 1st round, because if you did, you're taking yourself out of a class that you view as pretty good. And these scouts do view it as good. And everyone says, the 2026 class, you don't know if it's going to be good. Well, listen, this time last year, they thought this class was going to be bad. 25 class was going to be bad. It ended up being bad. Scouts have a pretty solid idea, generally, of what the quarterback class is going to be a year ahead of time. So I can say with enough confidence that they're probably going to be right about that. It should be a little better in 26.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to ask more about how Shedeur Sanders' situation played out to Nick and kind of get his thoughts, share my thoughts, talk about that situation, and if it was always a distraction, if the Steelers were never even really interested in. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you that this show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best app to get your tickets to live sporting events and live anything events. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game where every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time helps make it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as the tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. That's where everyone should use Game Time because they have the all-in pricing, meaning no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. The seat view feature is a game changer because you can look at when you hit buy, you can see exactly what it looks like from your seat. It's an awesome feature there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off on the code. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, PennLive.com. Nick, let's rotate to Shedeur real quick. I know he's not a Steeler. I know there's some people that are sick about talking about him, but there were a lot of things that tied Shedeur Sanders to the Steelers, and it ultimately didn't happen. You know, I think a lot of local reporters got it right when we were saying that we don't think it's going to be this big thing that the national media was making it out to be. But I am intrigued to see how things continue to play out for Shedeur, because even without them meeting with him at different stages, I thought they would take a look at him, in the later rounds. But I'm not shocked by Shedeur Sanders falling at all. I said all along he wasn't a first round quarterback. I didn't think he was worth the first or second round, but I did think there was a chance for them to be there the fourth. But I ask you this, Nick, considering he still doesn't have a spot with the Pittsburgh Steelers, was this always a smokescreen in your eyes? I said it as much on the live stream, but I think I had even less ammunition than there is now to say that.
I mean, it sure appears so, doesn't it? Listen, and that was a smoke screen. I mean, Chris, you and I had discussions up to the draft about how I had heard that they like Shedeur and were potentially going to select him. Guys, that was from league sources. They had the league fooled. A lot of people thought they were going to take Shedeur or Dart. They thought that at 21. The Steelers did a great job of doing that. And that's why the national media was so heavily leaning quarterback for them, because they had planted those seeds. Very good job by the Steelers smoke screening people around the league. But, I really think that if you look at what happened, and the fact that they passed him up for an edge rusher in the fourth round, right? Not one of their big needs. Sawyer was a very big value pick compared to the consensus. They took him over Shedeur. And then, in the fifth round, could they have taken him in the fifth round? I think that's the question, right? I think it's possible, but it's very clear that they did not value him very highly. They would have taken him in the third round or the fourth round if they had valued this guy at an extremely high level. And it's pretty clear that they didn't have that much interest in him. It's pretty clear they didn't have this much interest. To be quite honest with you, Chris, I don't think this just goes for Shedeur. It goes for every single quarterback we heard connected to this team. Milroe, Gabriel, all these guys. They passed them up in round 3 for a running back. Caleb Johnson, they probably didn't expect Caleb Johnson to be there at 83, but they passed on quarterbacks. I think when you look at that and then waiting till the 6th round to address this position, even though it was Will Howard who had fallen, a few rounds we didn't think he was going to fall to, this showed me the Steelers didn't like this class. It's pretty clear as day. They just didn't like this quarterback class. And so they sure did smokescreen everybody. They didn't even consider it in the 3rd round. I don't even think quarterback was on their mind. They were thinking running back there, or maybe another corner or something like that if the right guy fell. It seemed like quarterback wasn't even on their mind. So, yeah, I mean, this is Shedeur specific, but it can probably even be extrapolated to other players on the board. It just doesn't feel like they were that interested in this class, period, and that includes Shedeur.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to play out. One thing I saw Stephen A. push was the idea that there was collusion in play to make Shedeur Sanders fall. Nick, I don't think that was it. I think that I thought that he is a questionable prospect with a lot of things they're impressive, but a lot more things that are confusing. I think that when you look at how they valued the quarterback position, how they looked at things, like you said, they said this guy is not the franchise guy we want. So why are we taking him like he should be a franchise guy? I just think that when at the end of the day you look at this, I think that when they made their plans, I don't think that they went into this saying, oh yeah, we're going to use Shedeur Sanders as a smokescreen. But when everyone kept harping it, they were just like, you know what? Omissions are the best lies, because we never said anything to get you there. And it's just, it just kind of built more and more and more. I think that's what happened with Shedeur Sanders. And, that's kind of where it's at now.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly where it's at. I mean, listen, the Steelers let that quarterback idea fester. They built into it by going to all those pro days. They built into it by bringing 4 more in for pre-draft visits. They milked that about as well as they could have. While gathering as much information as they could have on every single quarterback option, just in case they had the conviction on one of these guys. So it really worked in double time for them. And so they looked at this and said, here, we're not going to take one in the first round. In the middle rounds, do we really want to take somebody? Right. Maybe they like Jalen Milroe. I don't know. I don't think they love Jalen Milroe either. But maybe if he was in the 4th round there, maybe they would have decided to take a swing on him. But they really looked to me and they said, man, the guy we're drafting here is going to be a developmental backup. Art Rooney literally said that. Those were his words. The guy that is going to be drafted will be a developmental quarterback this year. And they said, why would we draft one of those guys? Instead, we can get an edge rusher that's a run setter. We can get a big nose tackle, 4-eye in YA Black. And instead, we'll get our backup quarterback that's going to be a developmental QB3 in the 6th round. All while getting fantastic value on it. Because remember, in the 6th round, as they were coming down to their picks, not only was Will Howard on the board, but I think just about 5 or 6 picks before them, Kyle McCord was still on the board. So they had 2 options for them if they really wanted them, and they really played this well. So quarterback angst, I understand it. When you are a franchise without a quarterback, when you are a fan base without a franchise quarterback to latch onto, you want to look at a guy and say, that's the option. That can be the guy that changes everything. But the Steelers didn't have conviction about it. I think they're right not to have conviction about it. And they played this well, not only in terms of the value they got in Will Howard, but how they played the league, because the league thought the Steelers were going to address this position much earlier than they did. And when they didn't, I think they caught a lot of people, not just in the media off guard, but I certainly think they caught even some people in the league off guard when they took guys like Derek Harmon earlier, Caleb Johnson earlier. So they got ahead of the track on some of these. So that was a big time thing, because there were a lot of teams, when I was talking with people kind of after the draft, there were a lot of teams in the back half of that 1st round, the Lions, for example, that really thought Derek Harmon had a good shot to land with them. And then the Steelers took him and they were like, whoa, not sure we completely saw that one coming. And it kind of threw them for a loop. So the Steelers smokescreen worked. It staved off those teams that maybe would have moved up for Harmon if they could have. And on top of that, they end up with a great defensive tackle, and they still get a solid quarterback prospect in the 6th round. I mean, it really couldn't have worked out any better if that was your view of the quarterback class. And I think that is correct to view it that way.
Same here. I think it's correct to view it that way. Again, I'm not condemning, anyone I'm not saying, hey, if you're not a franchise quarterback, you're terrible. You're bad. You can be a good backup quarterback. You can make a career off of that. I always say when people are like, oh, what was Mason? I'm like, Mason Rudolph has the opportunity to be a backup quarterback in the NFL for the next decade. That's $1 million checks for not getting hit every week. That's a pretty good life. And so when we're doing our evaluations, we're not trying to come at these players. I think that's what a lot of people are like, oh, you hate this guy. No, it's just we're just evaluating what we see there. And so I think you and I, we looked at it. We saw that it play out a certain way. It's been interesting to look at that. And I want to keep looking at that, though, because I want to ask about something our colleague Alan Saunders said Sunday night on The Final Word. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out at WPXI.com on their TV show. But he said something that was really interesting about the style of quarterbacks. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, to remind you, this show is also brought to you by Nissan. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects that we've ranked, and we pick one guy that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength, power, and needed to push the Steelers forward as we look forward to next season. This week's Armada Player of the Week is Caleb Johnson, the Steelers' third-round pick, Iowa running back. The Steelers needed a back who could navigate the holes at the line of scrimmage, just like the Nissan Armada conquered the road with capability and confidence. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say, go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what I think Caleb Johnson can do with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's clear that our Player of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence. Just like you can call in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder. Go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com for Nissan. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh. Nick, I was talking with our guy, Alan Saunders, on The Final Word. We were talking about quarterback plans, pushing things forward. And he said, look at the quarterbacks that they've assembled so far and that they're probably going to assemble. Aaron Rodgers, Kenny Pickett. Not Kenny Pickett. Mason Rudolph. Look at me. That Kenny Pickett being there with Shedeur Sanders messed me up, man. Like that whole Brown situation is just nuts to me. I think about that like every hour at some point. Like they really took Dylan Gabriel and then they took Shedeur Sanders after trading for TJ Watt while they still have Joe Flacco and an hurt up Deshaun Watson. I know I just broke way off of the intended topic here, but that quarterback room is nuts to me, Nick.
And it's not even like the craziest four-way quarterback battle that Cleveland's had in like the past 20 years. Do you remember Brock Osweiler, Deshaun Kaiser, Cody Kessler, and Kevin Hogan?
Man, dude,
that was a legit battle they had.
Kaiser, I remember,
great compared to that one.
Oh yeah, it does. I remember people were so hyped on Kaiser, like he was going to be the guy. Oh boy, fun times. But like I said, I wanted to talk about this. Alan brought up a good point. He said, you look at Mason Rudolph, you look at potentially Aaron Rodgers, who they're going to bring in, and you look at Will Howard. He's like, they're not the fast guys. They have a certain build to them, and that's where I thought it was kind of interesting. He's like, hey, next year they're looking for a quarterback like this, who's not necessarily slow, but isn't necessarily the most athletic.
It's interesting. I mean, listen, the Steelers have kind of been on a seesaw of quarterback types. When they drafted Kenny Pickett, it was like kind of in the middle of this. He was like, he's pretty functionally athletic. He uses his legs a lot to get out of structure.
Right.
Okay. Mitch Trubisky was the same way.
Yep.
Then after he was gone, it was Mason Rudolph for 3 games. And then they went kind of completely opposite. Russell Wilson last year was, again, a guy that had kind of been this off-script kind of great player before, but then he was kind of last year more of a pocket passer. But then Fields was this really mobile guy, a quarterback one-game mobile guy.
Right.
And then this year, it's kind of the opposite, right? Mason, again, kind of not mobile, can be functionally mobile. Will Howard can actually kind of run, honestly. Like Will Howard's probably a 4.7 40 guy.
He's not super slow.
Right. He can move. And so they're kind of all over the place. It's kind of, mobile to them kind of means functionally mobile, but that can go anywhere from functionally mobile all the way to the field scale, which is we're going to design quarterback power for you, read option, etc. So it feels like the Steelers are all over the place in terms of where they're looking. So I'm not sure we're looking at a specific type of quarterback here. Because listen, as we said earlier, the Steelers' top 2 options this year were Justin Fields and Sam Darnold. Those two guys are quite different on the scale of mobility. And then Aaron Rodgers is even different.
I agree.
More different. Differenter. I don't know. That's not a word, but it's 11 o'clock at night. So we're feeling this right now. So we're doing that. But they're all over the place. So I'm not sure we know the type of quarterback they're looking at. Now, maybe they want to look at a similar type of quarterback. But even if they were looking at similar types of quarterbacks, I mean, in that field, I mean, you can look at, sure, there's Drew Allar, there's Cade Klubnik, there's Garrett Nussmeier, there's LeNorris Sellers. It's all over the map. So, I mean, I guess you could maybe go closer to the Allar, Nussmeier, Klubnik side of that if you really wanted to. But I'd see nothing to say that LeNorris Sellers would be off their board or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not sure if I can tell you the type of quarterback they've been looking at, because I feel like over the last 3 to 4 years, their quarterback room has been so all over the place that it's like, who knows?
It could be all over the place again next year. I think that's what I do wonder is going to happen. Like, you know, how do they find stability there? But hey, Arthur Smith, you now have a guy that knows that's going to know this offense that you can use to your advantage. I think it's going to be interesting to see that. I don't think that the situation right now locks them into having just like a pocket passer or guys that way, like indie payments. I think there's a legit way to do things, and I think that when you're the Steelers, you're looking for it. If it is a pocket passer and that's just the best guy you got, then take it. But if it's a guy who's ready to move around, it's a guy who's ready to buy time with his legs and do some incredible things, you got my attention. Like, I'm not saying no. So again, I wonder if, you know, the style of the quarterback play actually does matter at this point, or because the Steelers will never tell you that, because then they know that to look at that's more draft clues. But to me, I look at this and I think, man, there's I look at I don't see the definite future there as far as the style of quarterback the Steelers have right now. Because again, like you said, last year it was very different the year from the year before that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I do think if you're telling me who their dream quarterback would be, I think it would be the guy in Cincinnati. Like, I do really think if they would have an ideal quarterback skill set, it would be Joe Burrow's. Yeah. So maybe that looks similar to that. But I mean, even during that kind of scale, right? It can go vastly different ways. I mean, Burrow's not exactly getting read options designed for him, but he certainly is dangerous out of structure and can scramble when you need to get him. You know, you need to get 5 yards on 3rd and 5. Like, he can do that for you. I think that's the Steelers is like kind of level towards this, right? But they've also definitely been comfortable with having older quarterbacks that aren't going to run a lot. I mean, clearly, because they're pursuing Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I mean, those guys don't really run a ton. So it's interesting, right? So the Steelers are kind of like, they tell us mobility matters all the time, and then Aaron Rodgers. And it's like, oh, you know, it's like, oh, mobility really matters. And then, you know, you're finding the 41-year-old guy. Okay. Yeah. But, you know, I do think the Steelers are kind of, I think they have an ideal quarterback in mind, and it's a guy that's functionally mobile. But I think that functional mobility can come on whatever level it comes on, as long as that guy on 3rd and 5, when they see man coverage, can run through the line and get you a first down. That's what I think they are looking at kind of there. But that could be anyone, as we mentioned. That could be from Allar to Sellers, and that is a vastly different level of mobility. So we'll see where it lands. I don't think we have one clue who the Steelers' quarterback type is going to be yet, just because of how over the map they've been. Kenny Pickett's way different from Will Howard, for example. They are different players completely, right? Justin Fields is completely different from those guys. And so they're all over the map. We'll see.
Nick, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I feel like you can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at FarabaghFB. Make sure to follow me at Blue Sky at Nick Farabaugh. Make sure to read the stuff over at PennLive.com. We're still pumping out draft stuff, of course, over the week. And also make sure to check out the YouTube channel, Steelers Blitz on Penn Live.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. I'm Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media, same handle every time, at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday. Back tomorrow with more on your Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.